just going to make sure that we're looking good.
Is that red light on the mute button supposed to be on?
Yes.
Okay. Then we are good to go.
Right there. Pretty cool.
All right.
Oh no. How did that go live on Facebook? Love it. Cool.
Nice. Be showing up looking weird in people's feed.
What's that?
I said I'll be showing up in people's feed now. What?
Oh, I just almost got my cigar wet.
Yeah, that would be the inherent danger of this format.
Oh, there's a lot of inherent dangers. I think we're going to overflow here a little bit.
Oh, that's okay. You mean like having electrical around water?
We already lost the camera, so that was fun.
Did you really?
Yeah, it was pretty funny. Unfortunately, it wasn't streaming when I did it, so that would have really made it better.
That would have made you probably instantly internet famous, having a video where the camera went out.
I know. I probably could have turned the tub down a little bit today. I wasn't sure where the temp was going to be, so we'll see how it goes.
That's all right. This feels really good.
Good. Well, welcome everyone to TubPreneurs. I'm John Uplager, your host with Vision Consulting, helping businesses identify and communicate their values and vision so they can move forward with velocity toward their goals. I'm joined today as kind of a different than what I had said we were going to have last week, just due to some scheduling differences. We had to move some stuff around, and I'm thankful to have Mr. Ben Schultz in the tub with me today, and he's going to be talking a little bit about his story as being an entrepreneur, doing home improvement, a couple other things that he's worked on with Schultz Up North, or Schultz. Schultz. Why am I saying Schultz? Oh gosh, great start to this.
You've got the brewery on your mind.
I guess. So
it's Schultz Up North Solutions.
Okay, I was close. It's my brain's not working today, but welcome, Ben. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Glad we were able to make this work. We had a little bit of concern with the weather and everything, but we're able to go. So tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and kind of how you got started with that.
Well, what I do is broadly covered by saying home repair, maintenance, renovation. I do everything from sometimes it'll be as minor as going over to somebody's house and hanging their flat screen TV, to sometimes it'll be as extensive as totally gutting a kitchen and putting in all new cabinets, countertops, sink, faucet, painting the walls, ceiling, everything.
So kind of a handyman of all sorts.
Most everything. There's a few things I don't dabble with, but...
Okay. Is that kind of your background? Has your background always been in that, or what have you done in the past?
So originally, when I was fresh out of high school, I started working in HVAC construction. I did that for 5 years, went back to college, served as a pastor for a number of years, then as a hospice chaplain, and then with all the changes in the world, that kind of wound to an end, and I started looking for ways to support the family, and it kept hitting me in the face what a huge need there is in the trades right now. And so I started flirting with it a little bit, got a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more aggressive. And especially since the lockdown ended, it's really taken off.
Yeah, it's interesting. So during, if we can talk about during the lock, well, first of all, how long have you had the company then?
So it's kind of a little blurry because the original company started under a different name. And actually, you helped me come up with the old name.
Oh, okay.
I was running with My Handyman for a few years, and I was
Yeah.
doing it part-time to supplement my income.
Yeah.
And then it kind of transformed. I'd say that started back, it was around the time my youngest daughter was born. I had done side projects occasionally before that, like once a month go help somebody with something, make a little extra cash. But that was really the mark where it really took off. Partly because one of the best motivators for getting up and going out there on your own is finding yourself unemployed.
That's very true. That's very true. So you kind of went through this season where maybe you had a job doing something else, and for whatever reason that ended. Was that due to COVID or something less expected, or?
So the full story is I was working full-time in hospice care and running another company, which was very part-time, and that ended due to some issues with management at the hospice place I was working at. I started doing the construction stuff and picked up around the same time a part-time job doing hospice, and that one was ultimately brought to a close by COVID.
Okay.
Due to, it was spiritual care, we literally weren't allowed to do anything,
Right.
and so it just, that was gone.
You can't exactly have a business in like going out to people's houses when you're not allowed to go out to people's houses.
Or even a job, really.
Yeah.
It really was a big game changer. And at first, I honestly thought, well, nobody's going to want me in their houses. And then, as you know, the psychology didn't go the way we expected, and everybody started going, when they're stuck in their homes, gee, it's time to finally get that wall painted. It's time to finally add the deck.
Yep. A lot of folks were looking for updates on their home because they're spending more time in the home. We saw that in every sector. It seemed people were finding different things that they were going, oh, wait a second, I need this done. And of course you had the influx of the COVID cash as well.
Right.
Right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm sure that's a discussion for another time. But so you had folks with an influx of cash that were seeing all these things that were needing to get done, and you had this little side business. And so you mentioned like you had to start with the idea of, well, gosh, I'm kind of broke. I don't have a job, so I've got to go out and do something, right?
Right.
So as you were going through and doing that, what kind of changed there? What happened? Did I not put it on Do Not Disturb? All right, hold on a second.
It's okay. I know. In the olden days, I'd hold a card that said technical difficulties. Yeah, technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Yeah. Well, they can hear, they just can't see.
I broke the internet.
There we go. Sorry about that. Sorry, folks. Hang on 1 second. Sorry, guys, we're having some technical difficulties here.
There we
Oh,
go.
there we go. Is it working? It's working.
Moving.
Fantastic. All right.
Good deal.
It's going to be an odd one.
Careful.
Gonna have some stuff to cut off on this one.
That's all right. All right, so could you restate the last question?
We'll see. So, coming into COVID, and you kind of were sitting there, you didn't have a job, or you had lost a job. You had this kind of side project. How did you go about and turn that into your main thing? And I know you talked a little bit about, like, obviously broke. You like, if you don't have anything, you got to do something. But how did you turn it into a main thing, and how did you find clients?
So one of the main ways I found to find clients, again, good, bad, or indifferent, is I started using some word of mouth, but some lead generating services through the internet. There were a couple different websites that I worked with. And I say good, bad, or indifferent because there are pros and cons to that. I felt for my situation the pros outweighed the cons. I need work. This puts me in front of a larger group. It's a more targeted group than just hanging stuff up at the bulletin board in the hardware store. But the downside is, especially with those lead services, they can cost a fair amount of money.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Especially if you're small and you're just starting out.
Yes.
I would say it's very different if you're an established company and you're just looking to grow. But when you're literally deciding, okay, do I buy next week's groceries or do I spend some money on advertising to get work next week?
Yeah.
That's a little bit rougher.
Now, one of the things you mentioned that you kind of saw yourself as doing well through that was managing that cash flow. So as you were kind of going through that and you're looking at these different lead services, how did you as a starting business go, okay, I've got $0 in the bank account and $500 that needs to go out? What was the solution through that?
Well, for me, the solution was I started on the lower end with my pricing structure to get more work. Which there again, you could do a whole episode on pricing structure.
Oh, absolutely.
But for me, I found that was a good way to get my foot in the door, and I had to put my pride on a shelf. I mean, I had to feed my family, so it was kind of I will do virtually anything for money. I mean, I'm not working the street corner, but I was doing, especially starting out, you take some, we'll say, very dirty jobs that maybe once you're a little more established, you're like, no, I don't want to pressure wash that crap.
And I've seen a lot of businesses do this. As a matter of fact, the cleaning company that I managed for 4 years, when I came in, it was a similar situation. At that time, we'd take just about anything because we had to. Did it do it again? All right, sorry, folks. We're still having some issues. I've had this happen before. Sorry, folks. We're gonna do some in the tub changes here really quick. I feel like every time I try to mess with this in any form of fashion, I think it might be this USB flash. I usually don't have this many issues.
You know how to make a guy feel special.
The only time we've had an issue is we have a software update on our phone.
Oh, those are killer.
Okay, I think we're golden. We're gonna see. Oh, jeez.
Time will tell.
Just as we're getting into the good stuff, guys. Oh, sorry.
You're all right.
Sometimes, guys, there are technical difficulties, and you just gotta roll with them. It is what it is.
True.
I feel like we're gonna jump all over the place now because I have to regather my thoughts on where we were.
Well, that's all right.
So we were talking a little bit. I'm assuming what you were talking about is something like a home advisor, Angie Leads type thing.
Right.
And I know when I was running the cleaning company, we used the same thing. And we started off the same way. We'd take anything at the start because we just had to have the business. And as we continued to grow and expand, we had to start narrowing in that niche.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you went through a similar thing in your business. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say so. And it's still an ongoing process because I'm basically a one-man shop. I mean, I have a few people that I'm in a loose partnership with where, like, we get a big project and we'll help each other. But generally, I'd say because I'm so small, I'm still narrowing that down, and it'll take time. And it's an ever-changing market. I mean, God willing, usually when you do something for most people on their house, unless they're very well off, usually they're set for a while.
It did it again.
It did. How can you tell?
I'm looking at it.
What is
Guys,
it?
I don't know what's going on. I'm not really happy right now.
I don't blame you.
I've not had this many issues with this thing. What the heck? It's showing right here. I'm sorry, guys. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh, no. Oh, here's my issue. I'm so sorry, guys. I swear I've done this before. Not everyone goes this way. We're going to have a lot of editing to do. For those of you who are watching, I'll cut this out, but I'm looking over at my tablet to see what's going on, and it apparently wasn't live. It was back whenever we were having the first issues, so I don't know. We're not going to have any more interruptions. It's all going to go well. Thanks for sticking around. I appreciate you guys. Glad we don't have too big of a viewership base on the live yet. All right, so continue. Sorry.
Oh, now I lost my train of thought.
It happens. It happens. This is going to be a little all over the place. I apologize, guys.
I think I was saying just because it's a small operation, there's still an ongoing process of refining that niche and learning. There are certain jobs that you learn as you go on that in any field, certain projects that pay much better than others. And part of it is mastering your pricing structure, and part of it is also learning where those sweet spots are and refining to that. And I'm getting better as time goes on, but I'm still learning.
So you're kind of looking for where's the most profitable jobs, the ones that make the most sense.
Well, yes, in the sense that as a business, one of your main goals has to be to turn a profit. Otherwise, you can't stay open.
Really? Oh, who would have thought? To be in business, you want to turn a profit.
I know. All these woke people just don't get that. That's a whole nother video.
Yeah, that's a whole nother video. Absolutely. But you're absolutely right. In order to be in business, there has to be a profit that's made, because why would you do something and not make a profit at it? And as you're out there and you're looking at starting your business and everything, the pricing game is something I think that a lot of businesses struggle with. I mean, I had it when I started my business doing coaching. I started off at a lower price point than I would have liked, and I took some jobs that are at a lower price point, and I'm still growing my business right now, but I have kind of a vision of where I'm going and what I want to be able to charge for my services.
Right.
And so as you guys are getting started off, sometimes it's hard to start off at the high price point because you don't have anything to show yet, and knowing that, and being aware of that, and kind of taking that into consideration, making sure that you're still profitable on things, but maybe you are going to take a couple jobs that you wouldn't normally. The one caveat to that, and I'm sure Ben would agree with this, is as you start to grow, you have to learn and know when it is time to start cutting off some of that excess jobs that aren't going to pay you as well. Would you agree?
Right. I would absolutely agree. I was just talking with a friend about this the other day. She used to manage condos. And she said, one thing you really need to learn in your business as you go forward is not everyone has to be a client.
Right.
You reach a point where some people just are not worth it. And yeah, that sounds kind of mean, and maybe it is, but there is a sense in which you have to look at it as what's best for the business, what makes sense for the business. And there are some people that either the project's not right or they're too high maintenance. It's not going to be worth it to have them as a customer.
Absolutely. And I saw this time and time again in the cleaning world. And as we started to grow and gain that confidence in ourselves and in the product that we offer, we had to start going, hey, I don't think this is a good fit for us. Like, people always assume that, you get a client and they have to be your client until the day you die. But at the end of the day, sometimes a client is not in line with the values that you hold.
Right.
And so knowing that and kind of having a vision for what does that look like? Who are we as a company? This is, by the way, guys, a great spot where core values can come in and helping you to find out who those clients are. It's going to help you as you continue to grow forward and look for building the kind of business that you actually want and that you're actually excited about. Because I'm guessing those customers that you're talking about, they're probably draining on you. Is that right?
They are very draining emotionally. They're draining on time. Then time is money. And that's one of the things that's helped me in my personal life get organized is now that I've come to a point where I can comfortably say this is what my time is worth. Now I start looking at when I'm at, quote unquote, off, because you're never truly off. But when you're off, there are some things that I'm like, gee, it doesn't make sense for me to mow my yard when I'm worth like $75 an hour when I can pay the neighborhood kid $20. It's just not a valuable resource. It's not about me being lazy. It's using the resources that I have available to me properly.
Yeah, and that is such a good point, because I've seen that time and time again where I talk with so many different business owners or executives, and they're spending time doing things that at the end of the day, it's like, what the heck, man? And I'll give you a good example of this, actually. So a while back, I was talking with somebody who had a lot of money. I mean, he was making high 6 to 7 figures every year. And his mentor had come to him one day, and he was out working on his vehicle. Now, the guy's prior profession, prior to what he's in now, he was a mechanic.
Okay.
He knew how to do it, right?
Right.
But his mentor came over while he's working on this vehicle, and he's like, "What are you doing, Dan?" And Dan's like, "Well, I'm working on my vehicle." He's like, "Why?" "Well, because I know how to do it." Okay, but is that a good use of your time? Is that something that's actually bringing you forward? And I think as you start to gain that confidence that you're talking about, you're going to start to realize that your time is worth more. And I'm going to give a good example, a small one, but a good example nonetheless. This hot tub, right? This hot tub's become a business asset of mine as I've used it to build this podcast. But at the end of the day, I don't want to be maintaining this hot tub. And Ben, when he came over, he goes, "Wow, this is a clean hot tub. I'm just glad I'm not the guy who has to clean it." And I said, "Yeah, I'm not the guy who has to clean it either." And he goes, "Wait, well, this is really clean for not having been cleaned, but it's I don't want to clean it. So I have somebody that I pay to come out and clean it, because to me, it's worth that time that I'm saving to just have it taken care of and not have to worry about it."
Right. And some things, hot tubs are a little bit more that way. Some things are so technical that even when you can do it yourself, it's just not pragmatic. There's somebody else that can do it in a quarter of the time and end up costing you less money sometimes even than you doing it yourself.
Exactly. this is something I see a lot with businesses too on the social media realm. So many businesses I talk to are like, well, I can do social media, I can go on and put a post on there and I can do this. And what I find is, one, it's not usually done as well as it could be if you had subcontracted that out to a company that actually focuses on it. And two, the time spent,
Right.
This is something that my wife excels in, and so she can go in and work with a company and do in a few hours, have everything planned out for the entire month for a company, where they would spend hours every week trying to figure out what to post, how to post it, how do you create it, and then forgetting, and then that just throws off the whole algorithms and everything that all these social media platforms do. So just because you can do it doesn't really mean you should do it. It almost sounds like
Right.
you're saying focus on where the money's at.
Yeah, you need to focus. It's not always the money, but you need to be strategic. Like, there are certain... So the customer I was held up with before I came here, he's a good example of it's not always about the money. Financially, he's a great customer, but he's been a return customer for years now. I've learned that as a older retired couple that lives out in the sticks, they get lonely. Now, that loneliness turns into, we'll find stuff to pay him to do just to get him to come out here, because I make a point to building the relationship.
Yep.
And you have to be a little strategic, because it's every time I go out there, I'm not necessarily making bank or getting paid, but it keeps that relational door open to where they keep coming back. And long term, when you look at the long game, yeah, it's very much worth it.
Absolutely. And this is something I see a lot in the trades, and I'm sure there are a lot of you out there who are either starting a business in the trades or wanting to start a business in the trades, where the relationship aspect of it kind of gets lost in the fray. My biggest complaint that I hear over and over and over again about people in the trades is nobody answers the phone, nobody really cares.
Yeah.
I'm lucky that, like, I'm just lucky if they show up. And so what you're talking about is actually building a relationship with them. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that's helped you in your business?
So, building a relationship with them, sometimes it's as little as taking a few extra minutes just to listen to them, working on being a good listener, which I think it's a skill that's becoming less common with our dependency on electronics. Like, trying to actually fuel people to get them to talk, to express things. And so it can be a struggle, because sometimes they say something and you're like, oh, I want to chime in. And it's, no, if I'm here serving them, they just need to pour this out to someone. And for some customers, like this couple in particular, they don't really have very many other people. So that's what's going to create that hunger to get me back out to do whatever. Sometimes it'll be stuff I specialize in, sometimes not, but they've always taken good care of me. I mean, this is a couple that values my services to them so much that around Christmas time, they called and said, hey, could you stop out and take a look at something? Sure. Then I stopped by. What do you want me to take a look at? Oh, we just wanted to give you some money for Christmas.
Wow. Amen.
Yeah.
That's huge. And I love what you said there, because this has come up quite a few times on this podcast. This idea of serving people first, going out there with an intention. And that, again, if you're in business to serve people and to care about them. Now, for you, Ben and I met because it was a referral, actually, I was looking for somebody to officiate my wedding. And so Ben hasn't always been the handyman in my mind. He was Ben, the officiant, who was actually willing to come out there with a Jedi cloak and a lightsaber for my wedding. It was a blast, absolutely. But I have a feeling, can you kind of touch on a little bit how your training on the spiritual side of things and being that spiritual guide for people and that spiritual go-to person has helped you in building the relationships now through the business that you have?
So I think the biggest experience-wise would be the time I spent working with hospice, because that, when you have to spend time with people who are grieving, hurting, truly mourning, you learn how to just be with people. You don't really have to do much other than be with them. If you remember the biblical story of Job, When Job loses everything and his 3 friends show up, what everybody gets mad at them for is when they open their mouths. What they forget is they were sitting there with him doing nothing for like a week. And that's powerful.
Absolutely.
Just to be with somebody who's in that place. And everybody that's going through stuff is not going to be hurting to that extent. But it's still a loss when you have to call somebody and say, hey, my furnace is out, my well quit working, the light, I can't stand the light over the stove anymore, change it. They're still in that place. The other thing that's helped me from my training is academically wise, both my bachelor's degree and master's degree were heavy on counseling and psychology.
Okay.
So that has played and helped round me out too, probably more than the norm, but I think honestly the biggest portion of it is just learning how to listen and how to communicate. One thing that I get concerned about, because I still follow some of the trends in my copious free time, which I don't have much of, is when we're looking at our young people, they're losing the ability to communicate to the extent that when we were young, you didn't want to leave boys and girls alone together because, they might hanky-panky or whatever. And now they're worried because that's not happening.
Yeah.
You leave boys and girls alone together and they'd rather stare at their tablet than interact with each other. And it's the opposite danger. They're not doing it out of any desire to behave. They're doing it because they honestly don't know how to interact face-to-face with another person.
Right, and we see this more and more, and Bill touched on this last week as well, is, we have this phone addiction, right? This dopamine that hits, and we're so hung up on that next comment, or what can I post on Facebook that people will like, or how many likes can I get on a TikTok and all this stuff, and I fall victim to that as well. Like, my phone, for me, it's an asset. It's also kind of a liability, right? And having that discipline. And you talk about making the connections. How are people able to, or what are we supposed to be doing to make those connections? Because I still think that's something needed, absolutely needed, and I think it's something that as business owners can set us apart. So how do we do that?
I think that's the $1 million question, especially dealing with the changing world. We're coming out of COVID where everybody's out of practice because they haven't done it for 2 years. I think some of it is doing what you and I are doing, actually sitting down with people. That's becoming a lost art. Like, I was thinking about it on the way over. I'm like, other than a few close friends, how long has it been since I went over to somebody's house just to go over to somebody's house? How often do we actually sit down with somebody and look at them in the eye while we're talking to them? It's not a very common thing, and it's become less and less common as we've gotten older, but especially in light of the last 2 years. But I think that's where this is a particularly huge opportunity, because if you look at the people who specialize in mental health, they'll tell you there are not resources for dealing with what we're up against. Right. Especially with the younger crowd. They don't have them. There aren't enough people who are trained. They can't possibly touch it. So it's a great opportunity to reach out for and to work on. I'd say another thing is you have to learn to be self-analytical. You can go out and get practice. Find some time. Just go out and start talking to a few strangers. And there's nothing wrong with setting back and evaluating afterwards. Well, this went really well. Gee, that didn't go so well. Yeah. Why didn't it go so well? What worked really well for me that I can replicate? And just practice at it.
Well, and that's so true. Because, you read it's so funny because these principles go back hundreds and hundreds of years. And I remember even hearing about Benjamin Franklin, right? Mm-hmm. And we think of him as this great mind with all this great stuff. But when people interacted with him initially, they didn't like him. He was kind of an ass. And it took one of his friends who was willing to come to conflict with him and actually talk to him and say, hey, Ben, people don't really like you. Like, they're literally walking to the other side of the street where all the horses crap to avoid talking to you because they don't like you. And Ben took that to heart. Ben had that self-analytical of being able to go, oh, I didn't realize that. What can I do better? And so he started to keep a notepad of how these interactions went. and what happened that moved him forward with a relationship or backwards with a relationship. And that's something that's so prevalent today, because I think you're absolutely right. We don't converse with people anymore.
No.
We don't sit down. It's all online. It's all this. I mean, the number of people I've talked to who don't even know how to date anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, granted, I have no idea how to date, but I've been married for 3.5 years. I don't have to worry about it, thankfully, to a degree. I still have to go out and date my wife on a regular basis, and I still have to get better at that even. But I don't have to try to meet new people in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we go out and meet with people? And I love what you said, because you have such a focus on just listening to people. And if you guys can take the time to stop and hear people out, don't put your spin on it, don't try to correct it right away. Like, just listen to people. Sometimes people just need to be heard. And once you hear it, once you take it in, once you give them some comfort and some empathy, you can discuss with them if they're open to idea, right? Because something I struggle with is I just want to fix things, right? As men, we're fixers.
Right. That's
And
how
so
we're
being
programmed.
able to stop that. Is it safe to say that maybe stopping and listening, taking that time to meet with people one-on-one and look them in the eye, might also help in more than just our business, but maybe our relationships?
Well, I was going to say, that's, especially in marriage, that's something that's huge, is men want to fix things. Women just want you to listen to them talk about their problems.
Yeah.
It frustrates my wife no end. And sometimes she literally does just want me to go fix whatever. But it frustrates her to no end when every time she talks about something, I'm like, okay, I'll go do this. I'll go do this. How can I take care of it? She's like, no, I don't want you to just go take care of it. I want you to actually listen to me, interact with me. I want to get your attention.
And I heard somebody put it this way, you know, at the start of a conversation, I know this is a business podcast, but really business is so much about relationships, and relationships are so much about how we interact with other people. I heard somebody mention it this way, you know, when your spouse sits down and they have an issue, you even just asking them outright, say, hey, what do you need right now? Do you need comfort, solutions, or space? Comfort, solutions, or space. And they're going to tell you. And guys, 90% of the time, women want comfort. They just want to know you care. And I struggle so much with this personally. So I think that's just great advice in general for relationships and for business as well.
Well, I think your focus is entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs tend to be small. So your family circle is going to overlap a little bit with your work circle and your work life. So that definitely comes into play. I mean, your next customer might be your child's friend's mom or something.
Absolutely. You never know, because a lot of times you're working, like you said, with family and friends first as you're starting to build this out. What's kind of one thing that, as you look back over your time as an entrepreneur and this endeavor of starting this company, what's one of those things that you look back, you go, man, I wish I would have known this at the start, and it would have helped me so much?
I think one thing that one of the things that comes to mind is that I struggle with being a bit of a people pleaser. And you have to remember, it's not always about pleasing people. Yes, it's about service. If you have a person that is really upset, if they're a reasonable person, they're usually going to respond to you listening to them. There are a lot of unreasonable people out there. These are the ones that are not worth your time, no matter how much they're paying you. And that plays into it too, and learning that, you know, not everybody has to love me. It's okay to say no. In fact, you could do a whole podcast on, really, your yes doesn't mean anything until your no means no. No, that's one of the things we were taught in seminary with managing a church, is you have to get comfortable saying no, because until you can say no and mean it, when you say yes, it's not going to mean anything. Because before you know it, you've got 5 different people who have gotten you to say yes to doing something at the exact same time.
Wow, that is so insightful, I think, there. Guys, I hope you heard what Ben was saying, that your yes doesn't mean anything until you learn to say no. And put another way, one of the business mentors that I follow puts it as a really simple, you got to have some haters. right? You know that you're making it big and you're making an impact when you start to have some haters, because not everybody's your customer, not everybody's reasonable. We do our best to serve people and serve people in an honest fashion with integrity and caring about them and their situation. But sometimes you just gotta say no.
Right.
It's really dumb. I'm gonna relate this back to Star Wars. Obviously, I'm a Star Wars fan. Ben, you know this. You were at my wedding. We had lightsabers. I recently watched Episode 1, which I'm not a huge fan of the first 3, but we won't get into that here. But there was a really interesting spot at the one point where Anakin and his mom were slaves. And Obi-Wan makes the comment. He goes, well, I didn't come here to free slaves, right? And he ends up getting Anakin's freedom, but he doesn't end up getting his mother's freedom. And it's really because he knew what his purpose was, and it was a greater purpose than this. Not that there's anything wrong. Like, obviously, freeing slaves is a noble cause. But that's not what he was there for, and that's not what his mission in life was. So even though it's a good thing, sometimes good things can be the enemy of great. Right? And that's, if you read the book Good to Great, it talks a lot about that, is you have to give up good sometimes to be great. And I think that's kind of, in a nutshell, what you're saying.
That's definitely a part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to strive for greatness, at times you're going to have to say no to good. There will be things that'll come along that might be a good opportunity, but if you say yes to that, what are you saying no to? Like, maybe if I say yes to this project that, yeah, I could make tens of thousands of dollars doing, maybe that's the straw on the back that's going to break my marriage.
And sometimes, people think like the grass is greener on the other side, right? We hear that expression all the time. And this kind of goes into that as well, of the grass is always greener. Well, the grass is green when you water the grass that's right in front of you. Like, you want to have the greenest grass, water the grass that's right in front of you. And there's story after story after story of businesses that get sidetracked in their mission, which, by the way, if you don't have a mission, you should. They get sidetracked because they don't have that mission defined, and they get sidetracked in what they're actually trying to do. And it seems like this golden opportunity over here. And sometimes it goes okay. Sometimes it ends up costing them a lot of money. It costs them their relationship. It costs them their business. You have to be able to look at it and really define out what your mission is. What's your core cause, purpose, or passion in your business, in your life? And then look for opportunities that are going to take you closer to that. There's a lot of great things out there that you could do. You could be a handyman like Ben is. Maybe a handyman is not the purpose, the core purpose, cause, or passion that you have. You could be a business coach like me. That's great. Like, those are great things, but they're not necessarily always going to be what you have as your core purpose, cause, or passion. You got to find out what that is and move forward to that.
I would agree. I would just add, I think you still have to listen, because it's rare, but there are times that come along when you're like, well, that's interesting, but I don't really want to do it. But I find myself thinking about it. And then I start thinking, wouldn't that be more exciting? Gee, some doors are opening up in that direction, and if I pursue path B, maybe it's twice as lucrative as the path I'm on. Not always by any stretch, but it can happen. Yeah.
And I think, again, knowing where you're going, knowing what your core purpose, cause, or passion is, goes into that. Because if it fits into that, if it's something that maybe isn't even immediately, you can't see the value immediately, it might be there. You never know.
Do you think your core purpose changes over time? Or is it always constant?
That's a great question. I think there's ability for businesses to evolve, right? As you kind of go out there. But mission is one of those things, when I think of core purpose, cause, or passion, it's bigger than what we do, right? It's an overarching, I'll give you a good example. One of the clients I work with, their core purpose, cause, or passion is glorifying God. Now, they have a niche built upon that, so it's through this specific thing that they do. But when they're looking at an opportunity, the core purpose, cause, or passion really should be something that is bigger than just what you do. So when you're looking at those opportunities, like Ben said, of, maybe there's this or maybe there's that, does it fit that core purpose, cause, or passion? Because at the end of the day, we're all put on this earth for a reason.
Right.
And we all have those things that fuel us and give us energy and help take us further in our life, in our mental state, in our business, in so many different ways. And they breathe life into us. And that's what the core purpose, cause, or passion really comes down to at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. I like putting it that way, that it still fits into your broader picture of what you're about, but maybe it's not the niche that you thought it was.
Right, exactly. So there's definitely different things that can change in your business over time, and I think you're experiencing that in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'll tell you, one thing that really kind of opened my eyes to it was I found out Samsung that made your phone. Do you know what they originally made?
Oh gosh,
have to turn off airplane
I've heard
mode.
it. I don't know off the top of my head.
They originally made ramen noodles.
Okay, maybe I haven't heard it. I know a lot about Samsung, but
They're one of the largest electronic companies in the world now.
Absolutely.
But like 60, 70 years ago, they were making ramen noodles. And you can't say they're not a success.
Right.
But things have changed a little bit over time.
That's so true, and that goes with too being able to be moldable to the times.
Mm-hmm.
Right. One of the great examples that I have comes in the way of a local company here that was dealing with COVID. Right. You're dealing with all this stuff with COVID, and one of the things that came up on that was this idea of they're a restaurant, they're now shut down. Right. Mm-hmm. They literally can't do what their niche is, which is providing quality food to folks. And they had to change.
Right.
They made a very quick change. It was a minor change, so it wasn't going from ramen noodles to electronics. But if you look at Samsung, Samsung's a really interesting company because, yes, they've been very successful. They've also made damn near everything under the sun.
Right.
I mean, they have gotten into so many avenues that didn't work as much as they got into electronics that did work. And so this company decided to go from a restaurant model to a takeout model. And they did it virtually overnight. It was really pretty amazing. And they were able to keep their business thriving. So sometimes you have to be able to kind of move on the go, call a blitz, change the shot, right? Change what you're doing to fit what's going on around in the environment around you.
Yeah. When I was way back 2 decades ago, I don't know if I ever told you, my first degree was actually in business management. We used to have to do this thing called a SWOT analysis. I don't know if they still use that term.
Some businesses do.
Yeah, but you either when you're starting a business or as you're going along, periodically you look at what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, what are our opportunities, and what are threats to our growth.
Yep.
I think that fits in with the flexibility like you're talking about and growing and changing and
exactly, yeah, looking at those things exactly like you talked about, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And honestly, if you're constantly looking at those in your business, and if you're not sure how to start, that's where a business coach can really help in those areas, is kind of facilitating that conversation of strengths, opportunities, threats, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Or whatever they want to call it. There's multiple different ways that you can do that. But you're absolutely right. Being aware of those and being able to foresee those and change directions as you need to is so important.
Right. And I think, just to tag on your shameless self-plug, a second set of eyes can really be beneficial because we tend to get blinders on what we're focused on. And somebody who's familiar with business that comes in like a coach can be that second set of eyes that says, hey, have you considered this? No, I haven't. Why didn't I ever think of that?
And that's so true. I've seen that a lot with businesses. So whether it's a coach or a mentor or a good friend, a good friend to me that's helping me with my business is a mentor, right? Having those people in your life that can help you kind of see the things that you can't, because we all have a certain worldview, right? A lot of what I know, we could get into a whole discussion on worldview and how we see things, but at the end of the day, our worldview is kind of set. And if you go back to when we were talking with Ken, he talks about the fact that by the time you're 35, everything you do, everything you believe is really just a subconscious protocol in your brain. So having somebody who can come in and kind of upset that that protocol and bring some new information in, or a different way of looking at things, can really help things in a lot of ways.
Right. Absolutely. And yeah, worldview is kind of like, at least the way I've always thought about it, is it's kind of the lenses that you see the world through, how you perceive things. And yeah, they're, by the time you're an adult, they're fairly set. But it's not hopeless either. There's evidence, and Jordan Peterson talks about it, with even into your upper ages, when you expose yourself to new experiences, new things, it can literally set off new proteins, new pathways in your brain.
Absolutely. And there's so much science behind that, guys. That's exactly what we talked about when we had Ken Scott on the program. And on that note, one of the things I always ask is, what's one of the books that you'd recommend to somebody who's looking at getting started in a business, or newly in a business, or maybe they've had a business for a long time, that might help them as they continue down this journey?
For me, one that I've really enjoyed is more about personal development, and that's Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. Just because you are your biggest asset, and you're only worth what you can get out of you. And that means you have to take care of yourself, and obviously I have room for improvement. We all do. But it's something to strive so that you can get the most out of you, and you can get the most out of your business. And you become, at least I've found, when you start developing and working more on yourself, it helps with your relationships with clients, with family, with friends. That also helps, it draws people to you. In my case, you find more peers who want to help you do what you want to do, or that want to work with you. Where, for example, some of us, we have kind of this loose collective where we realized on Facebook, if somebody posts, hey, I need my bathroom gutted and redone, and you post, hey, I can do that, 95% of the time you're not going to get a response.
Yep.
But if I tag my friend and say, hey, my buddy can do that, he'd do a great job for you, about 80% of the time I'd say he gets a response. And quite often gets the job. Same thing if he tags me. And you find kind of your team, the people that you network with, that can help you build.
This is a great point that Ben's making, because at the end of the day, people are looking for help, and sometimes we want to be the person who provides the help, but sometimes the best way we can provide the help is being the person that people can come to and say, oh, I've got a guy for that, I got a guy for that, I got a gal for that, whatever it is. And that's kind of what you're talking to, is at the end of the day, as opposed to saying, hey, that's me, I can do that, saying, hey, I really think you should talk to this person, actually builds credibility not only for that person that you're referring, but for you, if that person goes out and delivers a quality product or service.
Right. You want to be careful with your name and who and what you attach it to. You don't just do it willy-nilly. You want to be pretty confident this person's going to deliver a fair deal and a good quality.
Absolutely. Ben, as we kind of wrap up here, is there anything else that you'd like to share with that aspiring entrepreneur that might help them in their journey as they continue to move forward?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I'd really like to encourage people with is, and I've got a friend who's struggling with this right now about starting her own business. Don't be afraid to step out and try it. What I'm doing now, believe it or not, I originally thought about doing over 15 years ago. And it took getting fired and not having any other good options to do it. And now I'm just going, if I'd started this 15 years ago, where would I be? There might be my name on the side of a ton of trucks driving around town.
That's so true, guys. Don't wait. Start. Take the leap of faith. It really does, and it really is something that can end up paying innumerable dividends back to you. More time with your family, better financial life. It's scary. Stepping into the unknown is scary. And I know Ben can attest to that. I know I can attest to that. Anybody that's been in the tub with me can attest to this. Stepping into the unknown is scary, but it gives you so much power, because at the end of the day, there is one person that your success depends on. And it's not your boss. It's not your manager. It's you. And the beautiful thing in this world is you're the only person who you can control. You're the only person who you have any sort of power over. Do you agree?
Right. I would absolutely agree. And I'd add, think about the known. We talk about the unknown is scary, but how great is the known? And my alternative was I can go work for somebody else and make $20 an hour. And that's really up here, the plateau for most of us is going to be that field. You go out and start working for yourself. Yes, you have your own expenses. You also have all the tax write-offs. Don't never underestimate the value of a good accountant. They're literally worth their weight in gold. But when you think about the known, how excited we cling to it because it's what we know, but it's really not that thrilling compared to the possibilities.
Amen. I totally agree. And Ben, thank you so much. There's so much good wisdom that has been shared on this week's podcast. I really appreciate you coming on board. Ben kind of jumped in last minute, and I appreciate that. We were going to have him on an episode later, but it worked out well just due to some circumstances that he was able to come in today, and the weather held off, so that was great. So thank you so much, Ben. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Guys, next week in the Tub, we're going to have Matt Bullock with Tent Craft, and he's going to be talking about how to create a culture that is living, breathing, and really something that you can get everybody excited about. Matt has just some amazing success with his business in Tent Craft, and I know he's going to have so much good to share with you guys. I appreciate you guys tuning in and dealing with all the upsets and everything, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Take care. All right.
I'm going to sit up now because I love it, but I'm overheating. So if you have your